Hey everybody, Gurmy's Coaster Yard here, and in today's episode of Germanator Studios, we are going to be putting the final touches on the log flume because I forgot um, to put any sort of exit path on the ride and open it up. And one issue as well that I address here right at the beginning is putting block zones on the ride. Um, so, of course, lift hills in the Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 log flumes count as block zones or block breaks, if you will. Um, Basically, they can stop the ride, and they do in the game's logic. However, one issue is that when you have the rotator piece to spin the car 180 degrees, or the log, I should say, um, no previous log can advance past its lift hill until the log ahead passes that rotator piece. And because we have a very long block zone between the first lift hill and that rotator piece, cars are getting stuck and they're piling up on the lift hill. So what I did to combat that issue is add singular station pieces throughout the ride in spots where I wanted these quote unquote block zones to be. And you can rewind and see where I put them all throughout the ride, but there's one on top of that first drop and one at the base of it in the little cavern, as well as one directly before that rotator piece. And that's enough to get the cars spaced out enough that they can navigate the entire track without stopping, at least to the best of my knowledge. Um, and what's nice is when you have stations in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, at least on the log flumes, when you have stations that are not connected to an entrance or exit, the log will just zip right through them without stopping. Um, I think it stop for like a fraction of a second, but it's virtually indistinguishable. So for all intents and purposes, they don't stop. So anyway, that's how you can make additional block zones on your log flumes in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and that's a great way to help with spacing. Although one note I will make is, and I don't know, log flumes can be finicky in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, um, and I don't really know what the parameters of this are, but I made a really large log flume once, also with a show building and everything, and for whatever reason, it would decide after like 5 minutes of operation just to crash. One of the logs would just fall off the ride, and unfortunately, sometimes that's a glitch you can run into. I've run into it too with wooden roller coasters putting a block brake right before the station. So you'll see when I design wooden coasters, not that I have any more plans to do so later in this series, but when I design them, I never put the block brake right before the station. At least it's something I try to avoid doing because of that issue. But anyway, I totally skipped over building that little uh, gift shop building, and right now I'm going through and adjusting the fences in the ride because I want it to be better themed. Um, so yeah, that's what I do there. Anyhow, um, the gift shop building is pretty straightforward. It's no different than any other gift shop building I've done at the end of a ride. However, I will extend it in a little bit because I realized I had this long patch of land with nothing in it, and not really big enough for any more rides. And we didn't really have much in the way of rides that I wanted to include that were Western themed. I think we had like the Bucking Bull ride, which I think is a little too violent for an amusement park. I've used it before, but in general, I feel like if someone has to sign a waiver to do something, it shouldn't be in an amusement park. It should be its own standalone attraction with specialized individuals. Um, Best case scenario. Anyhow, um, so no bucking bulls because I think that's the only one that would have fit there if I wanted. So I ended up going with just putting or extending this building and basically making a storage area. And you can see I sort of divided it into two sections. So the end on the left side there is more or less a little garage storage area. I don't know what would go in there, but the park could use it for something. And then I thought in the middle we could have maybe some sort of an office space or something. So I decided to make that one 2 stories. From the outside, it would just fit the scenery, of course, but maybe on the inside, there's some sort of office space for some department or something along those lines. Um, just something, whatever it may be, I don't know. But nonetheless, now we have a building there, and it's not just empty space. And I looked into putting some sort of like porch roof or covering over this to make the queue enclosed, but ultimately I couldn't really come up with something that worked because I didn't design the queue to be enclosed, and it's difficult to do these porches in conjunction with queues because you can't do those standard porch pillars um, adjacent to uh, any pathway piece. Even if you use the M. Brooks cheat code, it doesn't work. That's one of those few pieces that just doesn't like to cooperate with that cheat. Um, One thing I did do, however, is I decided I wanted to add a little more to the other end of this western section. So I found the other lasso animatronic. I think it's called like the lasso horse trick or something. I don't remember. But I put it near the entrance. Then I decided, you know what, that's a high foot traffic area. I don't want to disrupt it, so I'll put it right here on the actual western, uh, like Main Street section. Um, and I thought that would look a little bit better. And then there would be like two different lasso performers on either end. Um, I don't know if I'll keep it, but for now, I thought it worked fine. But that's everything with the western section, and as far as I can tell, I think that's all the space we have filled in the western section. So up next, we are going to be working on giving our resort a facelift. Not that we had much of anything to begin with, but this main big hotel, I decided I want us to start tackling it. And to start, you're going to see me working on a veranda out front for cars to pull under and, to drop stuff off and check in. But that will speak for itself over the next few minutes. So I want to talk about the reason I'm starting on this project. In the past, I've used projects like the hotel, the other hotels, and the parking garage and such as sort of filler between areas of the park. And that's what I'm doing here. And that's probably, I'm going to try and pace myself after this episode when working on the hotel because I I know that I want to. Well, I know that the next area in our park and the second to last area, I want to be like a modern themed area. As you may recall, our park is called Isle of Ages, and we're working our way through this timeline of, the history of the world. And I want the next area to be modern and the area after that to be future themed. But truth be told, I just, you know, when you say modern, you could mean anything. I mean, the western section takes place in the 1800s. So modern, by that logic, could be anything from the 1900s to the present day. Now, of course, I think I would rather err on the side of present day, but that almost seems like it's themeless, if you know what I'm saying. So I want there to be some sort of twist or sub theme to that area, but I just can't come up with something on my own. So if you've watched this far in the episode, comment below what type of modern themes you would like to see. It could be, I would be willing to consider anything from the 1900s to the present day. And I mean, any era in the 90s, but I just want to come up with something that looks modern and feels modern, but still has some sort of theme or storyline to it, if that makes sense. Just to give that area some direction when we build it, so it doesn't feel like the area that really has no theme. Granted, because the theme park is themed to a history and a timeline, maybe having it modern would make sense and it wouldn't feel without theme. But I feel like it's just there's not a lot you can do to make it feel generic. So maybe we could do like an alternate history or something leading up to a different modern. I don't know. So, anyhow, point being, I'm going to work on the resort property and build that up until I come up with something. Or maybe if I get an itch to design something, I'll work on the future section of the park first and we'll finish with the modern. Don't know yet. I also don't know what kind of roller coaster I want there. I'm thinking maybe like a B&M hyper coaster because we have plenty of space where the water park will eventually go to really do a nice out and back. But at the same time, do we want a roller coaster that really leaves and leaves and leaves the park property? It's just stuff to consider. So while that's considered, and of course I would love your feedback on that. But while I consider all that, I'm going to be working on the resort property, and I'm glad that I spent more time on this than I remember because the footage is still rolling, and I really haven't missed a lot. But similar to the museum we built at the beginning of the series, we used those Roman columns from the vanilla scenery tab to have a nice front to that veranda and holding up that cover. And this, I should mention, is based, or is it somewhat inspired by Hotel Breakers at Cedar Point. Shouldn't be any surprise that Cedar Point is an inspiration for this build, um, but hopefully, as, I'm gonna say hopefully it won't be too much like Breakers in the end. But to start, I think you'll agree if you are familiar with Hotel Breakers that there are some similarities, but I try to make it different enough. But anyway, so we're starting with that veranda, and I wanted to have a nice looking facade as well. So I worked really hard on this, and you can see, or you have seen, that I went through plenty of different changes to try and make it look good. Um, but I settled on using sort of um, a textured wall. So we used brick walls on the outside edge and slate walls on the inside edge just to give it that texture that we were looking for. And I mess around with a variety of things, including like putting roofs on the edges and stuff, and just trying to come up with a shape for this whole front because this is sort of going to set the stage for the entire hotel. So I want it to look, grand and elegant, but classy and refined, not like in your face. Um, if that makes sense, that's sort of the goal I've been going for. Um, but another thing I guess I'll point out too is we started laying out the map and sort of the whole plan for this hotel at the very beginning, really before I even started recording stuff. I had an idea of what I wanted this hotel to look like, as you may recall. Um, and then when we did the modular hotel rooms episode, I also laid out some of the hotel rooms just to get a feel for how things would be placed. But I realized that if we did all that first, then it would not leave enough room. Speaking of modular hotel rooms, here I'm putting some in, but those will be gone by the end of the episode. Anyhow, um, oh, where was I going with that now? Oh, I forgot. Anyhow, yeah, so we started laying out this hotel, but I realized I really want the main entrance to this hotel and the whole main lobby area to sort of tell the story for the rest of the hotel. Because the modular hotel rooms, I mean, that's exactly what they are. They're just copy and pasted. That's not what's gonna, tell you what kind of hotel this is. So I decided I'm gonna delete a lot of that surrounding stuff and work on the main entrance and that whole area first and make that one cohesive unit before I really branch outward. And then when I branch outward from there, then it'll be a lot easier to design the hotel in the shape I want, which will be more or less the same as the shape we already have. It just may not line up with the paint on the ground. In fact, I know it won't, as you'll see in a little bit. Um, we end up shifting everything else a little bit over. So more Hotel Breakers inspiration. I'll spoil it a little bit, but we're going to build a rotunda later in this episode, a big circular room and a big tall circular room. And the oh, where was I going with that? Anyway, the center point of that rotunda has to be a little further back from the cross section of these hallways that I had laid out. So those will definitely be a little different, and we're going to build up this hotel around this main sort of structure that we're building today, but we won't finish it today. We'll work on it later. So the first thing I decided I wanted to do after making that facade is to build up this monorail station. I decided I wanted to build that up. That way I had sort of a border on the rear and a border on the front, and I could figure out the rotunda with those parameters. And yes, So anyhow, yeah. So this station, and the queue lines are really laid out much similar to the one you're looking at right now. And I noticed that pathway was messed up. I don't know how long it's been like that, but I am sorry to all the peeps I've left stranded there. I did not mean to. But anyway, I used that station as a reference point for the one we are building today, um, just because this one worked and I knew I wanted the layout to be more or less the same. And the only real difference in terms of the paths is that I end up moving the exits to the middle because I didn't want to have any of the exit paths on the exterior of the building. I wanted it to be all self-contained. So luckily, the way we did the ramps here, which was also slightly different, having a little flat section in the middle, um, doing that allowed me to. I guess it would have worked if I did the ramps like the other one, but we had room to put those exits right there in the middle, and then they have a shared exit path. And it took me a couple tries. Granted, that's all I could have possibly tried, but to figure out where I wanted that exit stairway to be, and yeah, it ended up fitting on that other edge, as you can see. And yeah, so I'm not sure where that path is going to go. It might just be self-contained, or I might try to build like some sort of restaurant near there just to have some reason for the guests to want to go to the hotel aside from transferring um, monorail lines, because I think those lines share some stops too. So anyhow, um, yeah, gonna give them a reason to go to the hotel because there are no real hotels in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3, and unfortunately, guests can't check out these rooms. But that would be awesome if they could. Um, so yeah, I'll have to figure out something to do that. But anyway, man, now I'm just trying to stall. I ugh, this is so I don't know what to say. Here we are again. I feel like it's not funny. I don't know. I'm sorry if you guys are like shaking your heads at the screen right now. I'm not trying to have a lack of things to say, but yeah, this is all the same as the other one in terms of everything from the tracks and below. But just to make it look nice on the inside, I did want to put these walls up on either side of the paths just to make it feel a little more contained and not like you're in this shell of a building. And then where I could up top, I placed the colonial floors. I thought those looked a little nicer than the office roof pieces. Um, you could do it either way, but I figured just to keep it a little cleaner looking, I would go with those. And now I guess this is where it'll get a little more interesting, is building up these walls. I started with a solid wall, but I knew pretty quickly um, that I wanted those to be big windows on either side of the station. And oftentimes I'll start building with solid walls just to get the shape of something first, and then I'll switch them out with windows where I think it makes sense, or I'll experiment with different window um, placements. And you've seen me do it before if you've been paying attention. It's just how I build things. I have more or less all the time in the world to do this. I mean, not actually, but I'm willing to take my time to refine something into a better product as opposed to just rushing it and not considering every angle of a project. Granted, I don't always get every single detail, but I try to consider all the details. I mean, at this point, you know that, so I shouldn't have to explain it, and I won't keep explaining it. Um, but yeah, there you can see I put big windows in there, and of course, on the back wall, I put windows all along the top, and I wanted to have like a nice row of windows, but I didn't want to have a big open section of windows, if that makes sense. Um, Not like floor to ceiling windows, just because I didn't think it was necessary, and I didn't want too much light coming in from that back wall. Um, and then along this front edge, as of right now, I'm pretty certain that I want this to be open to the interior of the building. So I don't actually close it off. You can see there I used the scaffolding railing pieces, and then up top I used western porch pillars to have a nice tall um, columns to lead up to the roof. and to sort of define that edge of that space, if you will. And that sort of landing, I guess, will overlook the area where we'll probably have a restaurant or some sort of shop or something, whatever we end up building. Um, anyhow, that is what's, yeah. I lost my train of thought. Train, get it? Haha, because we're building monorail. Uh, man, I am slap happy if you couldn't tell. Anyway, so yeah, basically, and that's why I also didn't put an edge on that back side or that front side of the roof. I left that um, open for expansion. So now you'll notice, if you remember this technique from our dinosaur dark ride, we are building a skylight, and I think I did it somewhere else in the park too. Oh, in the museum building. Just using that same technique of having the 1/3 height wall, just to have a proper looking sort of barrier between the roof and the skylights. And I just added a row of those to make sure we get lots of natural light coming in from above and around the sides into that room. And you'll see in a moment, or I guess I already did it when I wasn't looking at the screen, but I turned it to nighttime and put some lighting in there along the path, and that was pretty straightforward. Um, yeah, not much to say about that, but it's relatively dim in there, relatively laid back. But anyway, here you can see we are laying out the foundation for our rotunda, and I started with these scaffolding pieces. Um, Decided I wanted it, again, to have an inspiration taken from the Hotel Breakers rotunda. So, and I knew that I want this hotel to be about 5 stories tall, um, at least the living quarters, if that's the right word for it. Um, I wanted it to be 5 stories tall because that's how tall the other ones are, and I figured that's a decent height. I don't know. Anyhow, here we're using the copy and paste technique to make the building a lot easier, and you can see it saves so much time in the long run. And I did it in quarters because it's faster to build a quarter of that piece or that section than it is to build all of it. And yeah, saved a lot of time. And then to get the outside edge, I just did the same thing with that flat carpet. I could have done it all at once, but that's just not the way my ADHD brain was treating that problem and solution. And then along the bottom edge, I just switched those to the girder pieces, I think they are, from the scaffolding pieces. And I just did that to make them look nice. And I realized I missed a corner there, and I don't think I went back and got that. Oh, so I'm going to have to fix that for the next episode. Sorry if that's making any of you cringe. But I decided to put a stone lion statue in the middle of this rotunda. Um, Normally, at the front of my parks, I like to use the golden lion statue. It's sort of just like I guess, an insignia or a theme at this point. And I thought, well, it would be cool if in the center of this lobby, maybe we could have a stone lion statue. And the idea would be that that was the original lion statue that stood outside of the park, or the original Germanator studios back in the day, before being replaced with the golden lion. And it's been preserved and put on display in this rotunda. And I feel like a rotunda is a great place to display anything because they always, or almost always, have a lot of natural light coming in from above, and it's just a very grand space. And those spaces just are saturated with grandeur and importance, um, and they just feel big. And so even the little things inside them, like a lion statue, have this large size about them, this large presence. And I thought it would be a good space for something like that. And it's a small little touch. Really, I mean, the only people who are going to see it are people who who aren't watching the series, are, when the series is done way in the future. Anyone who downloads this map and thinks to look in the rotunda may see it. It's a small detail, but it's there, and I think the way I see it, it doesn't need to be seen or recognized or like acknowledged, I guess. It's still there, and it's still a part of the story that this whole park tells. Um, anyway, I skipped over me building the actual dome part of the rotunda. Oh, I mean, I didn't have much to say about it, but I guess it speaks for itself. But I would have liked to spake, whatever, talked a little more about it. Ah, slap happy. It's late. I can't talk. I'm sorry. And you know what's funny is I don't go back and listen to these recordings before I post them. So I may watch this one day in the future. Oh, this is gonna be weird if I do watch it in the future, because hi, future me. Anyway, oh, big slap happy. Okay, okay, back on track, back on track. Anyhow, and now I know future me is probably smiling and cringing. Oh my goodness, it's already the end of the episode too. Yeesh, that was not how I wanted to end it. But anyway, yeah. Have a good night, you guys. I will see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.